She's just a footnote. That's what Travis Crane said the first time I was asked a direct question in a room full of executives. Redstone Capital had flown in 4 senior partners for due diligence. Their lead analyst turned to me, asked if we had a clean IP trail for the 2021 platform update. I opened my mouth, and Travis cut me off with a chuckle in that line. She's just a footnote. Like I was a typo on the margins of his personal memoir. I sat there, silent. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I already knew how the story would end. I'd seen the signs months before. Travis, our VP of strategy, loud, smug, allergic to details, had started dropping phrases like liquidity event and strategic monetization in every meeting. He was chasing a payout, grooming himself to be acquired like some slick startup founder who hadn't just coasted off everyone else's work for 5 years. And every time someone mentioned our legacy software suite, the actual product Redstone wanted, he'd pivot the conversation to branding, user acquisition, his visionary roadmap. I was the one who had authored the procurement frameworks, managed contract assignments, coordinated IP council sign-offs. But Travis? He made sure my name never showed up on the slide decks. Hell, I once watched him delete my initials off a spreadsheet before sending it to Redstone. "Cleaner this way," he'd said. He called me Spreadsheet Mary behind my back. I know because I saw it in a Slack thread he didn't know I was CC'd on. "Let Spreadsheet Mary run her little audits. I've got real negotiations to lead," he wrote to another VP. That was the same day he told Redstone we'd get them everything they needed by EOW, then dumped a 43-page vendor audit request on my desk and left for golf. Par for the course. I didn't yell, didn't vent, didn't even correct him when he misquoted our own licensing structure during the second investor call. I just listened, documented, watched. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps the team keep bringing you these corporate train wrecks. Anyway, back to the footnote. What Travis didn't know, because he never asked, never listened, never read past the first clause of a contract in his life, was that I'd been listed as the contractual assignee for 5 of our most critical vendor agreements. Not by accident, not by vanity, but because a year ago our general counsel asked me to be. "You're the only one who actually reads this stuff," he'd said, half joking. "Makes procurement a hell of a lot smoother if your name's on the line instead of chasing some exec who can't tell a scope of work from a salad fork." So I agreed, quietly. No announcement, no LinkedIn post. I just became the name on the dotted line. And when Redstone's term sheet landed in our inboxes, buried somewhere around page 17 was a reference to assignable IP rights as dictated by existing contract assignees. Everyone skimmed it. Everyone but me. Because I don't skim, I dissect. I cross-reference. I read. The entire acquisition hinged on those contracts. Our platform wasn't just code. It was bundled API licenses, proprietary cloud workflows, and legacy server-side rights that had been grandfathered in from a series of hilariously outdated but binding agreements. All of them pointed to the assignee, which, again, was me. I didn't bring it up. Didn't even blink when Travis told Redstone we'd close with 0 roadblocks. Let him puff out his chest and wave around his MBA like it meant something in the real world. He didn't know he was about to sign a deal that legally required my consent to execute. So I waited, like a footnote, quiet at the bottom of the page, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally read me. Travis called it lightning mode, his big strategy to look decisive in front of Redstone's acquisition team. "We're accelerating the timeline," he told legal. "Fast track everything. Due diligence, vendor disclosures, asset summaries, chop chop." He clapped his hands at the end like he'd just solved world peace. No one in the room looked happy. Legal's associate counsel turned a shade paler than her usual caffeinated glow, and ops stared at their shoes like the floor might open up and save them. But no one challenged him. Not out loud. You don't challenge a man like Travis. You just get out of the way, or he bulldozes you on the next performance review. I found out about the new schedule when someone from HR forwarded me a calendar invite labeled Redstone Transition Timeline, V Final. That was the first time I'd even heard we were closing in under 3 weeks. No one had looped me in. Not until a panicked junior in legal pinged me on Slack. "Hey, sorry to bother. Redstone asked about IP assignability. Travis said you'd handled those contracts. Can you confirm we're clean? We weren't. Not clean, not even close. At best, we were a mess in a nice dress, so I started pulling files. I knew where they were because I was the one who filed them. Our 2021 API vendor license, the one that made the core automation engine work, that one was signed under my name as a signee. Same with the cloud infrastructure usage rights from Core Nova, the tiny outfit we absorbed last December. Their CTO insisted on naming a single assignee to reduce transfer friction. Guess who Travis volunteered? Mary'll do it, he'd said, waving a hand. She loves her little forms. The term sheet from Redstone showed up in my inbox on a Monday morning. I remember because I spilled my coffee when I saw the clause. All IP and software rights must be fully assignable and transferable as defined in Appendix C. I knew what that meant. Buried in the appendix was a simple phrase that most people in this office would read right past. Transfer of rights is subject to existing assignee authorization as outlined in contract origin. Now, Travis didn't read past Section 2. I know because I watched him at his desk, scrolling while eating his stupid egg white sandwich, nodding like he understood anything. Then he forwarded it to our CEO with a note, "All looks good from strategy side." I didn't reply. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Because if what I suspected was true, if Redstone's lawyers had baked in assignee dependence on purpose, then someone on their side had already done the homework, and they were waiting to see if we'd flinch. That's when I felt it. The pressure behind my ribs. Not fear, something more precise. A hum, low and steady like a diver hearing sonar before the ship hits the iceberg. Something was off. Very off. The kind of off that ruins careers. But nobody else seemed to notice or care. They were all too busy printing their exit checks in their heads. So I kept reading. Every page, every clause, every footnote, because this wasn't just about a transfer of assets. This was about who held the key, and I had a sinking feeling Travis Crane was about to walk the entire company into a $75 million trap wearing blinders and a stupid grin. And the only person who could see the landmine coming was the one he refused to listen to. Again. I waited until after hours to pull the originals. No sense inviting questions from anyone who still thought I just ran pivot tables and filed PDFs. I kept everything backed up on my private drive anyway, not out of paranoia, habit. When you've been gaslit long enough, you learn to archive truth in triplicate. First contract I opened was the automation platform license from Synthix. There it was, plain as daylight. Primary assignee M. Whitaker. Dated, signed, executed. The version Travis had sent Redstone scrubbed the assignee field and rebranded it as a corporate general license. He even redlined my initials out of the digital copy, but the executed original, the one on file with Synthix and notarized by their counsel, still listed me. Second one, Core Nova. Same story. Contractual assignee for transitional deployment and post-acquisition support, M. Whitaker. That clause had been a headache at the time. Travis was out golfing, our counsel was on vacation, and their CTO refused to sign without a named individual he could call at 3 a.m. if things broke. Guess who picked up the phone those nights? Spoiler, not Travis. Third file made me pause. It was a joint licensing agreement tied to our front-end modules, asset-heavy, rights-limited, and deeply interwoven into what Redstone's due diligence called the core intellectual property package. Same clause structure, same assignee reference. Only this one had an addendum signed by a vendor exec I vaguely remembered from a very chaotic holiday week. I cross-checked the clause. IP transfer contingent on written consent from assigned signatory per section 9b. Translation, no sale unless I say so. I sat back, exhaled, stared at the screen like it had just turned into a loaded weapon, because it had. The next morning, I cornered Abby from legal, junior associate, whip smart, and the only one on that floor who didn't immediately defer to Travis's volume level. I didn't say much, just asked her to look over something. She read the clause, then reread it, then looked at me like I'd handed her a live grenade in a gift box. Wait, you're the assignee of record? On 5 agreements, I said, that I've found so far. She blinked. And they weren't reassigned? I shook my head. Travis never followed protocol. He didn't think it mattered. Neither did procurement. She pulled the Redstone term sheet off her desk, flipped to the appendix, and made the connection instantly. Then technically, yeah, without your consent, those rights don't move, not without a retroactive reassignment and new execution, which would stall the deal, maybe kill it. She leaned back. Does Travis know? No. Do you want me to tell him? No. I left it at that. No raised voice, no threat, just a shared understanding in the quiet air between us. I walked out of that office not shaking, not even anxious, just steady, like a switch had flipped in my head. For the first time in years, I wasn't at the mercy of someone else's ego. I wasn't a footnote. I was the clause they all skipped, and no one else in that building had figured it out. Yet. I spent the next 5 nights combing through every file, email chain, and Dropbox folder I'd ever touched. Vendor folders, Slack logs, calendar invites from old contract handoffs. Anything that might prove, not just suggest, that I wasn't some peripheral admin scribbling bullet points on vendor summaries. I wasn't gathering ammo. I was building a map. And when you're the only one who actually read the terrain, you know exactly where the sinkholes are. My folders were immaculate, color-coded, time-stamped, versioned. I had the original Synthix contract PDF still containing the metadata that showed I'd drafted the final version at 2:17 a.m. on a Sunday. I found a confirmation email from their legal department. Thanks again, Mary, for walking us through the assignee clause. Much appreciated. I took screenshots. I exported logs. I screen-recorded document previews just in case someone tried to delete or alter them later. Quiet power doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from preparation. Meanwhile, Travis kept preening like a peacock at a mirror store. He skipped half the diligence meetings, then bragged about owning the room in a company-wide email that he blind CC'd Redstone on. The subject line? Your VP of Strategy making magic happen. Somewhere in the thread, he tagged one of the interns to loop in the data nerd on the licensing junk, meaning me. Later that day, someone in legal accidentally shared a Slack screenshot with me instead of IT. In it, Travis wrote, "Mary's still digging through those dusty contracts like a damn librarian with no clue. She'll catch up when we're rich." Laughing emoji, thumbs up, champagne bottle. What he didn't know, and would never think to ask, is that Redstone's legal team had grown suspicious. They'd started asking about the original IP contracts, not the copies Travis had attached to his Redline master packet. I'd heard from Abby that one of their paralegals called our office twice, asking specifically for executed copies with notarized signatures. She'd forwarded it to Travis. He'd ignored it, so I stepped in. Subtly. I packaged the originals, the real ones with full assignability language and unaltered assignee fields, and uploaded them to the secure folder Redstone's lawyers had access to. I didn't override anything. I didn't delete Travis's version. I just renamed my uploads clearly. Final, signed, Synthix, assignee MWW, PDF, Cornova, executed license, assignee MW PDF. Front-end modules transfer clause R9B PDF. Let them compare. Let them wonder why the VP's version stripped the assignee fields and mine didn't. Let them see the metadata. Let them do what lawyers do best. Read between the lines. I wasn't chasing credit. I didn't want a raise. I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted the truth to arrive before Travis's ego finished writing checks the company couldn't cash. So I waited, quietly. Watched. And while he clinked cocktail glasses with potential buyers, I triple-checked that every digital breadcrumb pointed right back to me. Not because I needed the spotlight, because when it finally hit, when the clause they all ignored lit the room on fire, I wanted to be the only one holding the extinguisher. It was supposed to be a formality, just a last round of signatures, smiles, and expensive coffee, while Redstone's team wrapped a bow around the $75 million deal Travis had been crowing about for weeks. The pre-close meeting was booked in the big glass boardroom, the one with the fake succulents and the espresso machine that only Travis knew how to operate, like it made him special. He was already in there when I walked past, sleeves rolled, tie off, pacing like some Wall Street golden boy about to cash out. Then the door opened, and Abby from legal leaned into my cube. Her voice was low, steady. "They're asking for you." That got my pulse going, but I didn't show it. Just saved my spreadsheet, locked my screen, and followed her in. Redstone's team was seated already, 4 of them. All quiet, all unreadable, except for the lead negotiator, Marshall Green, who had a printout in front of him. A thick one. I recognized the header. Synthix Platform Licensing Agreement. Travis stood at the head of the table, smiling wide. Let's get this wrapped so we can pop champagne, yeah? Marshall didn't smile. He adjusted his glasses and asked, calm as a surgeon, who is the assignee on the core IP contract? The air changed. Everyone felt it. Travis blinked once, maybe twice, then launched into a word salad. That's just boilerplate, legal language. It all falls under the umbrella of our general corporate rights, standard across the board. No, Marshall said. It's not boilerplate, it's executed language, Section 9B, Synthix 2021. Names an individual, not the company. Travis let out a nervous chuckle. I'm sure that's just an oversight. We can amend. We're pausing signature until we confirm all assignee-dependent contracts. You could hear a pen click 3 seats down. No one moved. Travis turned to legal. Get this rewritten, now. Abby didn't flinch. We can't. Those documents were already executed. They're binding. The only way to change them now is with the assignee's consent. His eyes darted. His mouth opened, closed. I sat across from him, silent, sipping the coffee he didn't offer me. He looked everywhere but at me. Redstone's general counsel spoke for the first time. We'd like assignee representation present at formal closing. We'll reschedule as needed. That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, just precise, sharp. The moment the floor started tilting and no one in power had their footing anymore. I nodded once, didn't say a word, just collected my notes, closed my folder, and stood. Travis said nothing. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked small. Contained tension doesn't need an audience, it just needs clarity. And right then, the clearest thing in the room was that his bluff had been called. His shortcut strategy, exposed, his dismissal of the data nerd, about to cost him everything. And me? I was right where I'd always been, present, documented, and very, very necessary. Travis came in swinging that morning like he'd already won. New blazer, gelled hair, teeth so white they should have come with a non-disclosure agreement. The investor presentation was packed. Full house, board members, Redstone partners, even some of our junior staff were allowed to hover in the back with their phones off. Cameras were rolling, every eye pointed front. Travis loved a stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, grabbing the clicker like a scepter. Today, you're not just investing in a product, you're investing in the vision that built it. He clicked to the first slide. A vision I've cultivated since day one. I sat in the second row, arms folded, not blinking. I wasn't on the agenda, wasn't introduced, not even mentioned. When he reached slide 6, our growth milestones, he name-dropped 3 directors and our heroic engineering team. When someone from Redstone's bench asked about the contract chain of custody during the platform rebuild, Travis waved it off. On operational execution handled by the data side, our back-end analyst team, great folks, especially Mary here. She's our quiet footnote of diligence. He smiled like he'd just patted a golden retriever. The room chuckled. But Marshall Green didn't laugh. Redstone's legal lead was sitting 2 chairs down from me, and his expression didn't budge. Instead, he calmly opened his folder, turned a few pages, and adjusted his mic. Footnote or not, he said flatly, we have a responsibility to verify key ownership. Section 14A of the acquisition agreement, transfer of core IP and assignable software rights, calls for confirmation of the assignee of record. He let the weight settle before continuing. So I'd like to ask, who was the listed assignee on the Synthix, Core Nova, and front-end modules agreements? Silence. Travis blinked. That's all company-owned, all under our... Marshall held up a hand and flipped the page. That's not what the contracts say. The entire room stilled. Investors leaned in. Counsel perked up. You could hear someone's watch tick in the back row. Marshall looked at me, not Travis. Ms. Whitaker, can you confirm your role? I met his gaze. No theatrics, no smugness, just clarity. Yes, I said. I'm the contractual assignee on all 3 agreements. Verified, executed, and unrevoked. There was no gasp, No dramatic piano, just that slow, dawning hush that rolls in when people realize the math doesn't add up, and the person with the answer wasn't the one holding the mic. Travis started to speak, but stopped. Redstone's junior counsel whispered something to their lead partner, who immediately leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and stared at Travis like he was gum on the bottom of a Ferragamo. I stayed seated, still, ready. I didn't need to rise, the table had already tilted. Let them absorb it. Let them look back over every slide Travis had just delivered. Let them replay every time he'd dismissed me, minimized me, edited me out of decks and briefs and meetings. The stillness wasn't weakness. It was alignment. The moment when every lie goes quiet and the truth finally walks into the room, no spotlight needed. And I was the one carrying it. Travis laughed. One of those high-pitched, forced little chuckles that only happen when a man realizes the floor he's been standing on was just decorative. Well, sure, technically she's on the paperwork, but that's all administrative. I mean, she's not involved in the strategic. Redstone's counsel didn't even flinch, just raised a hand, palm out like a cop signaling stop traffic. Mr. Crane, per clause 14A, she holds controlling signatory authority over the IP assets central to this acquisition. Then he turned to me with complete, deliberate calm. Ms. Whitaker, do you acknowledge that authority at this time? I nodded once. I do. Travis blinked, then turned to our CEO, then to legal, then back to Marshall. Come on, guys, this is semantics. You're not seriously saying... Redstone's deal lawyer cut in like a scalpel. This transaction cannot proceed without the assignee's express consent. Her consent. On record. In writing. A pause. Then the buyer, Redstone's lead partner, the one who hadn't said a word all morning, finally leaned forward. You failed to disclose that? His voice was low, almost disappointed, like he'd bet on a horse that turned out to be cardboard. Travis stammered. I wasn't aware that legal hadn't reassigned. You're the VP of strategy. The buyer interrupted. And you didn't read your own contracts? Abby from legal, to her credit, stayed quiet, but I could feel her watching me from the side of the room. Our CFO cleared his throat, tried to change the subject. Well, the asset ownership remains within the company overall, so perhaps we can... No, Marshall said. It's not assignable retroactively, not without a signed, notarized amendment, which again would require her consent. And at this point, frankly, we're not interested in improvising the legal foundation of a $75 million transaction. You could practically hear the gears locking up in Travis's head. I didn't say a word, didn't gloat. Just sat with my folder open and my hands calmly resting on the table. The buyer turned back to me. Ms. Whitaker, would you be open to continuing discussions? Not a flicker of hesitation. Yes, I'd be happy to represent the assignee's interests in further negotiations. Travis looked like someone had slapped him in the back of the head with a brick wrapped in fine print. The room rebalanced itself in real time. Board members who'd never remembered my name were suddenly sitting up straighter. HR quietly excused themselves. The CEO rubbed his temples like he'd just read the autopsy report and found his own name on the toe tag. And still, I didn't move. Didn't demand anything, because I didn't need to. Travis had spent years pretending I wasn't in the room. Now the entire deal was locked behind a door he couldn't open, and I was the one holding the key. The silence didn't last long. Redstone's lead investor pushed back his chair and stood, slow and deliberate, like the decision had been made before the room caught up. We'll revisit the term sheet, he said, fixing his gaze squarely on me, with her. Travis actually sputtered, like a cartoon character choking on his own dialogue. Wait, what? No, hold on. She's not in executive leadership. She doesn't even hold a title that... Correct, the investor said, which is why your paperwork is currently under scrutiny. He turned to his counsel, who nodded once, clipped, final. We'll need updated disclosures, chain of custody, and a revised stakeholder summary reflecting Ms. Whitaker's role. Then, to our legal team, and we'll be contacting Synthix directly to verify execution. Travis looked to the CEO for backup. None came. The old man was just staring at the table like it might reveal a trap door to crawl through. Then someone from Redstone leaned in and spoke with just enough volume for the first row to hear. He cut her out of every brief, every org chart, not one mention. A board member across the table muttered something under his breath, something I didn't catch entirely, but I heard the tone. Disapproval, dawning shame, and a healthy amount of fear. HR's director slipped quietly out of the room, phone already in hand. Legal wasn't far behind. Travis tried one last Hail Mary. Look, I understand there were oversights, but let's not derail. Marshall turned to Abby. Can you confirm assignee status on all 3 core IP contracts? She didn't hesitate. Confirmed. All executed, no reassignment filed. That was it. Travis deflated in real time. You could see his pulse in his jaw. His hands clenched so hard the veins popped like road maps. But no one spoke up for him. No defense, no protest. Just air leaving a balloon that finally realized it had been floating on borrowed breath. Redstone's investor turned to me. We'll need a transitional board seat to ensure IP continuity during integration. Will you accept? I didn't look at Travis. I didn't need to. Yes, I said. Of course. A board assistant came over with a fresh folder. I flipped to the last page, scanned the language, and signed with a pen they hadn't handed to Travis. The moment the ink dried, someone whispered to HR on their way back in. A pause. Then, Travis Crane has been placed on leave pending internal review. I didn't smile, didn't flinch. Just handed the pen back, folded my hands, and leaned back into my seat like I'd always belonged there. Because I had. Travis once told a room full of investors that I was just the data girl who makes our graphs pretty. Now he couldn't even stay in the building without written permission from a woman he'd spent years pretending didn't exist. I didn't win by shouting. I didn't need to. I won by reading what he skipped and signing where he never thought to look. The conference room wasn't nearly as glamorous as Travis once made it sound. No champagne, no catered lunch, just quiet voices, thick folders, and the unmistakable scent of leather briefcases and freshly printed contracts. The kind of room where real decisions get made, without the LinkedIn photo ops or self-congratulatory speeches. Redstone's new ownership group sat at the table with their counsel, calm and composed, the air around them humming with finality. The last signatures were lined up, each one stacked with enough legal ballast to sink a lesser company. And then there was mine. The final box, bottom right, labeled clearly, Assignee IP Transfer Authority. I didn't hesitate. Pen down, ink dry, done. The buyout was official. Travis's era, if you could call it that, was over. One of Redstone's advisors, a senior partner with silver temples and a quiet voice, turned to me as the documents were collected. We're formalizing the transitional board roster next week. If you'd like a title adjustment, SVP, Executive Council, whatever you prefer, we'll write it in. I shook my head. No title. He looked surprised. Are you sure? Positive, I said. I don't need a new nameplate. I just need one thing. He nodded, inviting me to continue. I looked around the room, my voice level, but unmistakably clear. Next time someone calls me a footnote, read the footnote. Silence, then a few quiet smiles. No one needed to say Travis's name. He wasn't here. Wouldn't be. Last I heard, he'd been escorted out of the building an hour after Redstone finalized their internal report. Failure to disclose material dependencies was the phrase HR used. The man who once bragged about being the architect of everything we built had been ousted by a single clause, one he never read, tied to a name he always ignored. I stayed behind for a few minutes after they left. Just me and the echo of chairs pushed in, folders zipped shut. The city skyline blinked outside the glass like it knew a story had just ended. I pulled my laptop from my bag and checked the folder one last time. Contract copies, assignee confirmations, email logs. Everything tight, everything silent, everything mine. Travis used to walk around saying, "Details are for the interns." He always skipped the fine print. Turns out, the fine print skipped him back.